Hey guys, and welcome back to Reading with Mo. Today we are going to be talking about a whole bunch of books that are going to be coming out in the first quarter of 2021. So previously, if you guys have been around for a while, I used to do pretty much every month I would talk about a whole bunch of books, 10 to 20 books that were coming out in the month that I was excited for. Obviously, I didn't get around to reading all of them, but I just did a lot of research and there's a lot of books that I felt like I wanted to share and help promote more because maybe they weren't as well known as well too. But this year I am going to scale it back a little bit. I'm planning on doing these quarterly. So let's talk about the books that are going to be coming out for 2020 in January, February, and March. There's 29 different ones I'm going to be sharing with you guys, so let's get straight into it. I'll move over a little bit so it'll be easier to show you guys what the book covers themselves look like. So I don't own any of these books currently that are going to be coming out this month. I have checked out a few of them from my library, or I have them on hold. Ideally, I wanted to actually film and post this before the year started, but I just didn't get around to doing it until now. So some of these books have actually come out already, but I still want to talk about them. For the week of January 4th, there were two books that came out that I'm interested in. The first one is called Brown Girls. This one's by Daphne Palazzi Andreadis. Sorry if I butchered that name. And since there's a lot of books that I'm wanting to talk about, I'm not going to go into any of these too much in depth. You can always look them up on Goodreads or Amazon or your library and get some more info on them. This one is a debut novel and it takes place in New York City. We're following a group of friends and their immigrant families. They live in Queens. This one is described as a tenderly observed, fiercely poetic love letter to a modern generation of brown girls. I actually checked this one out from my library. The audiobook I'm on hold for, it's only like 4 hours, so I feel like I could listen to it pretty quickly. It's like the narrative is not one person, it's a collective of voices, and I haven't really read anything like that before, so I'm interested to see how I get along with that. Next, we have another debut novel, and this one is called The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. In this book, we're following a young woman, a young mother, and because of one lapse in judgment, it ends up that this government reform program ends up taking custody of her child, and she is basically the custody of her child is in the balance of if she will get her back or not. I just got the audiobook from my library for this book, so I'll definitely be getting to that one this month. Next, we have books coming out on January 11th. The first one is My Annihilation. This one is a book in translation. The author is Fuminori Nakamura and the translators are Sam Bett and David Boyd. This one is a mystery thriller in translation. So this book takes the form of confessional diary and it implicates its readers in the crime. So that is kind of what interested me in this book. It also discusses what transforms a person into a killer and can it be something as small as a suggestion. Next, we have a young adult novel, which I don't really read a ton of young adults recently, but there are still some titles that I've been wanting to check out, and this one I haven't read anything from this author. It's Vinyl Moon by Mahogany L. Brown. This one, we're following a young teen girl and she is healing using strong black writers to help heal herself because of a past relationship that has left her with scars. When Darius told Angel he loved her, she believed him, but 5 weeks after the incident, she finds herself in Brooklyn, far away from her family, from him, and from the California life that she's known. Then we have Yonder by Jabari Asim. This one's described as The Water Dancer meets The Prophets, which I loved The Water Dancer. I haven't gotten to read The Prophets yet, but this one is a novel exploring love and friendship among a group of enslaved black strivers in the mid-19th century. Then for the week of January 18th, there's two books that I'm interested in reading. The first one is called Yinka, Where is Your Husband? This one is written by Lizzie Damalola Blackburn. This one looks like it's going to be a contemporary fiction book, and we're following Yinka, who is a 30-something Oxford educated British Nigerian woman. She has a good job, good friends, and a mother though whose constant thing that she's saying is, Yinka, where is your husband? I feel like over the course of this novel she's probably going to find someone she meets, because it also is described as a rom-com. I don't really read a lot of romance books, but this is one that stood out to me. Then we have a book, while it's not a really new book, I believe it's like a republished book, and it's called You Don't Know Us, Negroes and Other Essays by Zora Neale Hurston and Henry Louis Gates Jr. He's the one who does the introduction for Zora's work. So this is the first comprehensive collection of essays, criticism, and articles by Zora Neale Hurston, and it spans more than 35 years of her work. And these 3 decades of writing that spans from during the backdrop of the birth of the Harlem Renaissance, the Montgomery bus boycott, desegregation of the military, school integration. Her essays showcase the role that enslavement and Jim Crow played in intensifying Black people's inner lives and culture rather than destroying it. I definitely am interested interested in reading more of her work, I have actually just recently purchased a set that comes with a bunch of her novels that I think it's Amistad Books just released recently. I'll show you guys a picture of it here, and it's hopefully going to be here by the end of the month. So I have a lot of books from her now that I can read. And lastly, on January 25th, there are actually quite a few books that are going to be coming out that I'm interested in. The first one is called Black Mixcellence, A Comprehensive Guide to Black Mixology by Colin Acer Apia and Tamika Hall. I feel like over the pandemic I have gotten more into cooking, baking, and also just like into mixology and learning more about different types of alcohols and how to make your own mixed drinks and stuff. So when I seen this book, it definitely called out to me. So this book incorporates different mixed drink recipes from some of the most renowned mixologists and stories of the historical impact of Black people in mixology. It's described as a go-to guide for any wine and spirits connoisseur, which is not something I would necessarily describe myself. I'm definitely an amateur, but it's something that I am interested in learning more about. Then we have Goliath by Tochi Onyebuchi. I've read one other book by this author, War Girls, and I still am meaning to read actually the follow-up to that one, but this one is a science fiction novel. So this novel takes place on Earth in the 50s, where it's begun to empty. Those who have the means and privilege have left the great cities of the US for more comfortable places in the space colonies. And those left behind are left to salvage from the infrastructure and stuff that's left. As they try to make an existence from that, their neighborhoods are being cannibalized. Brick by brick, the houses are being sent to the colonies, and what was once their homes was now just a reminder of for the colonists of the world that they wrecked. It's also described as a primal biblical epic, so I'm interested to see how this one is. Next, we have a mystery thriller book, and it's called Good Rich People by Eliza Jane Brazier. In this one, we're following a destitute woman who deceives her way into the guest house of a Hollywood Hills mansion, and unknowingly she becomes the target for this twisted game of the wealthy family that lives upstairs. I'm definitely going to be picking up this one, I think on audiobook if I'm able to get it through my library. Then we have another mystery thriller. This one's called Notes on an Execution by Danya Kafka. This one is more of a literary suspense novel, and it's deconstructing the story of a serial killer on death row, and it's told primarily through the eyes of the women in his life. Next we have Star Child, a biographical constellation of Octavia Estelle Butler. This is written by Ibiza Boy. It's a young adult nonfiction book. I love Ibiza Boy's writing. I also love Octavia Butler, so combining the two together I feel like will be awesome. I'll get to learn more about Octavia Butler, who I've been reading a lot of her books over the past couple of years, and she's definitely become one of my favorite authors. Next we have another mystery thriller. This one's called The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkoff. In this thriller, we're following a woman who receives an unexpected visitor during a deadly snowstorm. She herself is a true crime writer, and she ends up being snowed in this isolated farmhouse where she has gone to retreat and to write her new book. This sounds like something I would want to read more so in the winter time, and I guess January is still winter for us in California a bit, so I'm gonna have to read this one very soon or try to get the audiobook right when it comes out, because I just feel like it's definitely a wintertime book. Then lastly, of the books that I'm interested in coming out in the month of January, we have Worn, A People's History of Clothing by Sophie Thanhauser. This one is a nonfiction history book. In this book, it's looking at the history of clothing and the stuff it's made of, a deep dive into the everyday garments that have transformed our lives, our societies, and our planet. It's a panoramic social history where we learn the 5 stories of linen, cotton, silk, synthetics, wool, about the stories, about the clothes we wear and where they come from, illuminating our world in unexpected ways. I'm definitely interested in learning a bit more about the clothing industry and the history behind it, so this seems like a perfect book to start with. Now on to the books that are going to be coming out in February. First, we have Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I actually have received this from Book of the Month, so this one's definitely going to be a priority for me to getting around to read. In this book, it takes place in present-day California. We're following Eleanor Bennett's death, who leaves behind a puzzling inheritance for her 2 children, Byron and Benny, which is a traditional Caribbean black cake made from a family recipe with a long history and a voice recording. Then we have Black Girls Must Be Magic by Jane Allen. This one is the second installment in the Black Girls Must Die Exhausted series, and we're still following Tabitha Walker's story as she's going on with more challenges in life. I can't really say too much about this one without giving away things that happened in the first book, but this is going to be a trilogy. I read the first one, really enjoyed it. I'm interested to see where the story goes. I actually did request an advanced copy of this one from, I believe Harper is the one who publishes this book series, so I'm hoping that I receive that so I can get to it as soon as possible. And then we have What the Fireflies Knew by Kai Harris, which is a fiction book. In this book, we're following 11-year-old Kenyatta Bernice, also known as KB, and her teenage sister Mia. Their father dies from an overdose, and the debts that are incurred from his addiction caused them to lose their family home. They're sent by their overwhelmed mother to live with their estranged grandfather in Lansing. This one seems like it's going to be a hard coming of age story. Next we have Cherish Farah by Bethany C. Morrow. This is another fiction novel. We're following 17-year-old Farah Turner, who is one of 2 black girls in her country club community and the only one with black parents. Her best friend is Cherish Whitman, who was adopted by a wealthy white family. This book is described as unforgettable and weaving in searing commentary on race and class. It's a slow burn social horror that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the last page. The sun really decided to come out today, which I'm not complaining. Better lighting for this video, hopefully for you guys. It's not too like blown out now. But the next book I wanted to share with you guys is called Nobody's Magic by Destiny O. Birdsong. In this book, we're following 3 black women, Suzette, Maple, and Agnes, with albinism, who all live in Shreveport, Louisiana. This book is told in 3 parts, and it's a look at grief, female strength, and self-discovery set against a backdrop of complicated social and racial histories. I have to say, I also really love the cover on this one. I think it's so beautiful. The next 2 books I want to share with you guys are both mystery thrillers. The first one is The Cage by Bonnie Kistler, and this one takes place on a cold, misty Sunday night. 2 women are alone in the offices of fashion conglomerate Claudine Desmartineaux. One is the HR director. She's dressed perfectly and everything, and then down the hall is one of the company's lawyers, who is buried under a pile of paperwork, frantically rushing to finish. They leave at the same time, both of these women, each preoccupied with their own thoughts, and they go into the elevator to take them down to the 30th floor. When they arrive at the lobby, one of them is dead. Was it murder or was it suicide? We have Tripping Arcadia, a gothic novel by Kit Maquist. In this one, we're following Lena, who is a med school dropout. She's desperate for any job. She's trying to get help from her parents, but they're approaching bankruptcy. So when she's offered this position to work for one of Boston's most elite families, the Verdeaux, she knows she has to accept it no matter how bizarre the interview is or how vague the job description is. Next we have a nonfiction book, and this one's called The Dark Queens by The Bloody Revival That Forged the Medieval World by Shelley Puha. In this history book, we're looking at Brunhild, who was a foreign princess raised to be married off for the sake of alliance building. Her sister-in-law Fredegund started out as a lowly palace slave, but in 6th century Merovingian France, where women were excluded from noble succession and royal politics was a blood sport, these 2 iron-willed strategists reigned over vast realms, changing the face of Europe. I haven't really heard about them before, and I am interested sometimes in like stuff that happened more in medieval times, so I feel like this will be a fun history book to get into. The next one is one that's very popular and has had a lot of buzz, is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. The Paris Apartment is about Jess, who is looking for a fresh start. She's left her job and she's moving in with her half-brother Ben for some time. So she goes to move in with him in his apartment in Paris, but when she shows up, she finds it's a really nice apartment. She doesn't even know really if he could afford something that nice, and he's not there. The longer that he is missing, she starts digging more into the situation. She starts questioning all of the neighbors and trying to figure out what's going on and why her brother's disappeared. Lastly, we've made it to the books that are going to be coming out in the month of March, and there's 5 that I wanted to share with you guys. The first one is called The Last Suspicious Holdout by Lady Hubbard. This one is a short story collection. This author also wrote The Rib King, which is not a book I have read yet, but one that I have had on my radar before. In this short story collection, we are exploring relationships in a black neighborhood over the course of the late 1980s all the way to the eve of Barack Obama's inauguration. There's 12 stories in total in this collection, and it's looking at powerful and poignant moments in the everyday lives of African-American families, friends, and neighbors. Then we have another highly anticipated mystery thriller book, and this one is called 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. I think I have read 1 or 2 of his books before, and I know a lot of people are definitely highly anticipating this release. This one is about 9 strangers who they all get a list with their names on it in the mail. To them, it's nothing but just a sheet of paper with some names. None of them know each other or have ever met them before and think it's just junk. But then some bad things start happening to people on the list. Like basically a couple of them end up dying, and now because of this pattern, they're trying to figure out why they're all on this list and who sent it, and to protect themselves from whatever bad things are happening. I have actually a lot of mystery thrillers in this video, which I'm just now realizing, which is good because I feel like lately there haven't really been too many that I'm interested in, so I'm glad that I have some to get to this year. So the next one's called Curfew by Jane Coe. This one is described as, this one tells you to think of The Handmaid's Tale, but with the women in charge, set in a world where all men are electronically tagged and placed under strict curfew, and the murder investigation threatening to undo all of it. And we have another fiction book. This one's called Disorientation by Elaine Sue Chu. In this book, we're following a Taiwanese American woman, and her coming of consciousness ignites eye-opening revelations and chaos on a college campus in this debut novel by the author. We're following a 29-year-old PhD student who is desperate to finish her dissertation on the late canonical poet Shou Wen-shu and never read anything Chinesey things again. But after 4 years of research where she's had nothing but anxiety and stomach pain, she accidentally stumbles on a strange and curious note in the archives that convinces her it could possibly be her ticket out of her academic hell that she's in. Then we have another mystery thriller, and no surprise there, but this one is one in translation. It's called Portrait of an Unknown Woman. This one is written by Maria Gainza, translated by Thomas Bunstead. This author also wrote Optic Nerve, which is a book that's also been on my radar that I just have not gotten around to reading yet. And this one follows the story of an auction house employee on the trail of an enigmatic master forger. This book also takes place in Buenos Aires, which will be very fun to read from. And actually that was the last book that I wanted to share with you guys. That was the last one that's coming out in March. So look out for another video in this series, probably sometime in end of March, beginning of April, where I'll be talking about all of the books that are going to be coming out in April, May, and June. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and that hopefully you picked up or heard about at least a few different books that you hadn't known were going to be coming out already. Definitely let me know if you do read any of these books, how you feel on them, because I obviously am not going to be able to read all 29 of these books. Like, I do want to get to a good chunk of them, but realistically, I will not be able to read all of the books that I talked to you guys about in this video. So I'm excited to be able to share them with you, and hopefully you have found a new favorite somewhere amongst all these ones I've talked about. It looks like 2022 is going to be a good year for book releases, and so I'm excited to see which of these I end up loving, which ones I end up, I'm sure there'll be some I get to that are more disappointments, but that's just part of the journey, and I'm still excited. Those are all the books I wanted to share with you guys today. I look forward to seeing you very soon again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to subscribe if you would like, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!